Hi and welcome to PeaceMegTV. In this week's Lightroom tutorial we're going to be taking a look at 4 batch processing techniques to help speed up your workflow in Lightroom. So let's take a look at the first technique now. So the first technique we're going to take a look at is how we can synchronize our adjustments when we've edited an image in a sequence. So if we take a look at the screen in front of me, you can see I've got a sequence of shots of a neighbour's cat that I took, and in the first image you can see I've done some processing. So I've gone through and edited things to get it to kind of where I want it to be. So because these are all shot in sequence and I know the lighting was the same and the camera lens and everything else was the same, I can synchronize those adjustments, everything bar the localized adjustments. For example, where I've taken his eyes and I've increased the sort of the brightness and the contrast and the exposure on those things. Obviously they're not going to apply to every image because those adjustments would be in a different place. So what I can do is I can ensure that the first image, which is our source image, is selected. And then I'm going to simply hold the shift key down and click on the last image of the sequence. So if we look, the first image is still highlighted in a lighter grey than the rest of them, but all the other 5 images are now selected as part of that sequence. So from the library module, if I come down to the bottom right hand corner, you can see I've got the option that says Sync Settings. If I click on that, that'll open up a dialog box that allows us to specify exactly what settings will be synchronized. So you can see we have a checkbox for quite a few different options on here. So we can go through and we can adjust the white balance, the basic tone, so we've got the exposure, contrast, highlights and so on. We can even go through then and choose specific things like spot removal, crop, straighten and so on. So I just need to make sure that everything that I want has been checked. And the things that like the localized adjustments, so for example the local adjustments with a brush or graduated filter or radial filter, I don't want any of those selected. So I'm going to go through, check everything that I need to be checked, uncheck anything that I don't want. Once I've done that, I can hit the Synchronize button, and that will now go through each of those images and correct them based upon the parameters or the settings we've used in the first image. So there's the first one for speeding your process up. Let's take a look at the second option. So the second option we have available to us is that we can apply presets directly inside the catalog view. So if we take a look, I've got my images already in front of me. I'm going to click on the second image. I'm not going to use the first one because that's already been processed. So we're going to choose the second image. I'm going to hold the shift key down and select the last image in my sequence. That's now selected all 5 images. And if you come to the right hand side under the quick develop section, you can see we have save presets. And if I click on there, I've got a whole range of presets that ship with Lightroom, and you may have additional ones if you've created your own presets, or you may have purchased or downloaded some free ones online. They'll all be listed inside this section, and they're all applicable to the image that you've got selected. So if I wanted to, I could easily come into this and say that I want to deal with the, let's go for a selenium tone. I'll choose that one, and all those images now will be processed with that preset. I can also expand that preset out by clicking on the right arrow to the right hand side of the save preset, and you can see that I've got some additional options in there. I've got crop ratio and I've got treatment. So if I wanted to crop it, I could crop it down using any of these presets, or I can enter a custom one. I can also go in and choose whether I want to deal with a treatment of color or black and white. So you can see if I select those, it'll switch it back and forth between the 2 different options available. And the same goes with the crop. If I wanted to, I could say I want to crop those down to 16:9, for example. That will then crop those images down based upon that aspect ratio. As with everything, it's all non-destructive, so I can undo any of these at any time. Easy. And there's the second option. As I've done before, I'm going to select the first image in my sequence, and I'm going to hold the shift key down to click on the last image in my sequence. And if we look at the quick develop module on the right hand side of our library, you can see we have a couple of options available to us. We have white balance and we have tone control. Now we can expand those out and we have extra options available to us. But let's start off by taking a look at the basic options we have. So you can see at the moment we have white balance is set as short, but if we wanted to, we can easily open that up and we can choose any of the other white balance presets from the list of options. And if I wanted to, let's just say for example I choose tungsten, then that's going to change our image color. So I've changed the white balance on there, and if I wanted to I could choose something like fluorescent and that'll change it again. Or I can leave it as shot, or I can choose any of the white balances that are available to us. If I expand the arrow to the right hand side, you can see we can manually control this. We can adjust the temperature and the tint in exactly the same way that we can do that in the develop module, but what this gives is it gives us a little bit more control. We, instead of having a slider, we can now adjust this by arbitrary amounts, and we can adjust all of the images in this sequence by that arbitrary amount. So for example, we've got two lots of arrows to the left and to the right. We've got the double arrow, which is a larger amount, and the smaller arrow, which is a more fine-tuning amount, should we say. So if I adjust these, the temperature, you can see as I click, we have quite large changes in the temperature. Let's put that back to where it should be. And if I use the individual arrow, you'll see the adjustments get noticeably smaller. So we can get a lot more fine level of control over this, whereas we don't have to rely on a slider. And the same goes with the tint. We can use the larger amounts. We can use those to increase or decrease, and we can do the same with the smaller amounts. So we can adjust those as we see fit. And like I say, the benefit of this is the fact that we can do all the images in our sequence at the same time, and we know we're always adjusting those at a set amount, whether it's the large amount or the small amount. Next up, we have the tone control. Now we've got the option to auto tone, which will then go through, it'll analyze the image or the images, and it'll work out what it thinks is the best overall tone to that image. So we click on that, you'll see that'll go through and automatically adjust it. So that's adjusting the exposure, the clarity, and so on. Or if I just press Ctrl and Z to undo that, we can do it ourselves. So again, we've got the same thing. We've got the increase and decrease arrows. We've got the larger and the smaller amounts. And when it comes to exposure, we're dealing with either 1/3 stops with the smaller arrow, or we're dealing with 1 full stop with the double arrows. So you can control this quite nicely and quite easily. So let's just try adjusting the exposure. So let's go up 1 stop. You can see immediately that has quite a noticeable effect. If we press to go back 1 stop, you can see it puts it back to the original source. And if we go up 1/3 of a stop, you'll see the increments are smaller, and it gives us a finer level of control. So we can use that to get where we want it to be. And we can do exactly the same with the clarity. We can use the increased clarity, and we can increase that by a larger or smaller amount based upon the double arrow or the single arrow. And the same goes with the vibrance. We can also expand out the auto tone controls, and you can see we have a whole range of additional options available. We can now fine-tune exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So we've got a range of arrows that we can use, and like I say, these are all set to arbitrary amounts, so it means you get the same adjustment on every single image without having to rely upon a slider. Entirely up to you which way you think is the best way to work, but these options are available, so you can now fine-tune multiple images at the same time. While we're importing our photographs from our memory card or from our computers, what we can do is we can apply a preset during the import process. So I've got the import dialog box open at the moment, and if we take a look on the right hand side, you can see we have an option that says apply during import, and in there we have 2 options available to us. We have the develop settings and we have the metadata option. So if you want to apply metadata when you load it in, keywords and things, you can do that from this point. So you can use a preset, or you can create a new preset, or you can just input the keywords. But what we are interested in is the develop settings. So in much the same way as we had with the previous tip, we can go in and we can choose from any of the predefined settings, any of the predefined presets that we have available to us, whether these are ones we've created or the ones that are stock with Lightroom itself, or ones you've downloaded and purchased online. So what I'm going to do for this one is we're going to come in and we're going to say, let's go and have the black and white high contrast. We'll select that. And then when I import these images, that preset is going to be applied to each one of the images that I choose during the import process. So for this example, I've got everything selected. I'll just hit import. That'll go through the process of importing those images. And as you can see, it now goes through and applies that preset direct to those images. So there we go. As you can see, all of those images now have that preset applied to them. So we've got the high contrast black and white preset applied to each of the images imported in our last import. Now it's worth noting at this point that even though we've applied that preset during the import process, it's not permanent, it's completely non-destructive. So if I choose the image that I want to revert back to its original state, and I press D to go to the develop module, you'll see that the black and white preset has been applied. But if I come out of the history, you can say I've got the option, it says import black and white contrast high, so that has that applied to it. So we can't step back one step from that because the import process was the first thing in our history state. But what we can do is we can come down to the reset button in the bottom right hand corner, click on that, and that'll reset it back to the way that the image was when it was imported originally. So none of the settings that are applied during the import process and none of the presets have been applied to it. So we can revert it back to exactly what it's like out of camera or off your computer. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these tips for working with your images in Lightroom. I hope it's given you an insight into how you can speed up your process of dealing with multiple images simultaneously. If you did find this video useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of the new content we add every single week. If you have any comments, questions or feedback on this video or anything else covered on the channel, please pop those in the comment section below. If you do enjoy the tutorials we put out on this channel, please consider popping over to Amazon where you can purchase the new ebook we released on the Kindle store. 8 essential Adobe Lightroom techniques, where we go into detail about different techniques that every Adobe Lightroom user should really have in their arsenal. The link is in the description below and your support is much appreciated. Well, until next time, take care.